Asyon. I believe that culture is a narrative that binds us as a nation. It is something we owe to our ancestors and heroes who built the Philippines as it is today. It is important to give meaning to what being a Filipino means. It is also important to protect our way of living, our heritage, that we will also pass and to our children's children. That is why, for the past decades of public service, we've always advocated for the protection of cultural communities and practices. We have seen this in the weaving centers, the galleries, the cultural performances, our consistent support to our agencies, other organizations that seek to preserve, protect, and enrich our country's material customs, all of which must be supported with institutional and legal strength. Today, we seek to adjust and adapt to the challenges of the modern times and respond to the needs of identity. It has been more than a decade since we passed Republic Act 10066, National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009. We are now revisiting this law with the integration of cultural mapping at all levels of government. We filed Senate Bill 622. We have Senator Binay's Senate Bill 117, Senator Revilla's Senate Bill 1094, House Bill 5110, Representatives De Venecia, Villafuerte, Oribata, Enciso, etc., amending the said act. We filed Senate Bill 624, establishing the Linangan ng Likhang Bayan Institute for Living Traditions. It's a refiled measure which I wrote during the time of NCCA Chair Felipe De Leon to serve as an important center and laboratory for the protection, promotion, development of Philippine communal traditions. We filed Senate Bill 242, Cultural Education Program, seeking to develop, integrate, institutionalize cultural education across our educational system. We believe that these steps are crucial in our goal of harmonizing our diverse identities and building a nation that is rich and proud, which is why I thank all of you for being virtually present today. I would like to request our committee secretary, Mr. Joey Tunak, to acknowledge our guests and resource persons. And then we also allow, of course, our colleagues who are online to make their opening statement. Mr. Tunak, who are those online aside from our colleagues that I already mentioned? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May we acknowledge the virtual presence of Mr. Victorino Mapa Manalo, Chairperson, National Commission on Culture and the Arts. Good morning po.
When you are called, kindly open your cameras and acknowledge, although I see
Morning po. Good morning. Good morning, Senator.
Morning. I would have loved to have you here face to face, as I did during your oath taking during the Christmas season. I would have preferred that you were here because these are very important measures.
From
The NCCA. Yes, I see you with Marichu.
From the Cultural Center of the Philippines, Attorney Allen Francis Paligan of the Legal Office. From the National Library of the Philippines, Mr. Cesar Gilbert Q. Adriano, Director 4. From the Commission on Higher
See their faces, that they open their cameras, please, when they're acknowledged. See.
We have Mr. Erickson Reyes, Chief Education Program Specialist 2 from the Commission on Higher Education. We have Attorney Adrian Regine S. Donoan, Attorney 3, Legal Affairs Office, National Commission on Indigenous Peoples.
Who's representing the NCIP? Yes, Adrienne Dunuan, are you a commissioner? Is she a commissioner?
Good
Of the
morning.
legal-
Good morning. Yes, you're representing the NCIP. May I know your designation, please?
Good morning, Madam Senator. I am Adrian Dunuan from the Legal Affairs Office. I'm an attorney 3 under the legal, your honor.
Okay. Are you an indigenous person from what IP group?
Yes, Your Honor. I'm Tuwali Ifugao from Kiangan, Ifugao, Your Honor.
Yangan. Very
Yes.
good. Do you recognize what I'm wearing?
Yes, yes, ma'am. It's
Okay.
Ifugao Nation weaving.
Say that again so that it's clear, so that for those who do not know, they know what it is.
Yes, that's an inabol from the Ifugao Nation weaving, Your Honor, organization.
This is from Kiangan.
Yes, Your Honor.
It is ikat. It is called ikat.
Yes, Your Honor.
You also have ikat behind you
Yes, Your Honor. I think we
Hey.
got it from the same organization.
from the Bule family.
No, from Ifugao Nation in the Kiangan Weavings Association, Your Honor.
Mm. Briefly, in 30 seconds, can you tell us what ikat weaving is all about?
It's a hand weave. It's a kind of hand weaving technique in wherein they use the traditional methods of weaving, Your Honor.
Yes. The design of ikat, is it only done by the people of the Ifugao in the Cordillera region, or is ikat weaving also done, utilized in other regions of the Philippines and other regions perhaps in Southeast Asia?
Yes, I believe, Your Honor, it is also being done in other regions, but the designs are different. They use for the specifically in Kiangan we have our own designs, but the principle or the basic techniques that is being incorporated in creating the weavings, they are also being practiced in other regions and other countries, Your Honor. But as to the designs, we have our particular designs.
Okay. May I request from the NCIP, who is your chair?
Chairperson Alan Capuyan, Your Honor.
Or can you request, please, can we request in my next hearing to have the head of every agency? Because they are here when they ask for their budget, but they also need to be here during hearings that will enhance their mandate.
Will do, Your Honor.
Yes. And today is Tuesday. By tomorrow noon, may I request from the NCIP just a brief memo on ikat weaving in the Philippines and how it started. In short, the provenance of ikat. Who started it? Is it the people of Kiangan in Ifugao? But there are similar ikat designs in Mindanao as well, and in other countries in Southeast Asia. There are ikat. So we'd like to know, is this an influence, let's say, from Indonesia? Because so I'd like to be educated. And perhaps the NCIP, Yuratuwali. Okay.
Yes, Madam Your Honor.
Okay. The Tuwali are an indigenous peoples group, right? Do you also call an Ifugao house made by the Tuwali a Tuwali house or a Kiangan house? Because I have a Tuwali, but I was corrected and they say I should call it a Kiangan. So should I call it a Tuwali or a Kiangan? This is not yet the hearing, okay? This is just the introduction of the guests. So because you're a Tuwali, so should I call a traditional Ifugao house from Kiangan constructed by the Tuwalis a Tuwali house or a Kiangan house?
We don't, well, personally, Your Honor, we don't, what I know is that we don't really have a particular designation of that house. As long as it is built by an Ifugao, we just call it an Ifugao or Tuwali house, because it's really that similar, or we based on the different.
So should I call it a
communities.
Tuwali house or a Kiangan house?
It would depend, Your Honor, on who created that house. If it's found within Kiangan, maybe it would appropriate. It would be called a Kiangan house. If it is created in Banawi, then maybe Banawe, created by the Banawe
Okay,
ICC.
understood. Because I have a Banawe house and I have a Mayoyaw house and I have a Kiangan house. So I call it then a Kiangan house based on where it was created, not by the people who built it who were the Tuwali. Correct? Is that correct?
Generally, Your Honor, you may call it a Tuwali house because the Tuwali community may also be found in different municipalities in Ifugao,
So
like in
either.
Lagawe. Yes. So, but if
Okay,
you
either.
if
So the
yes,
Tuwalis built it, but it's Tuwali is the IP group
specifically,
and Kiangan is a LGU, is a municipality.
yes,
Clear.
yes, there.
Now, why do I ask these questions for everybody online and here? That's why cultural mapping is so important. So that I'm a fourth term senator and I've authored many of our culture laws. And we have an indigenous person as an officer of the NCIP who happens to be a Tuwali, and still there is this conversation. We are uncertain about the usage of certain nomenclature. That is why cultural mapping is so important. Correct, Ms. Dunuan?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you have cultural mapping for the province of Ifugao? Do you have a compendium of all your tangible and intangible heritage?
As to the local government unit of Kiangan, I'm not sure, Your Honor, but I believe that there is a museum in Kiangan. If you the where the School of Living Tradition is also found, wherein we have all our documentations and books on Ifugao and Kiangan culture, as well
No.
as the weaving school where the elders go to weave their products, Your Honor. But as to the for the local gov as to the local government unit, I'm not quite sure, Your Honor, if they have cultural mapping in Kiangan as well as the other municipalities in Ifugao.
I facilitated the building of a weaving center in Kiangan. Can you kindly coordinate with my staff to find out what is the name of that weaving center from years back and photos of whether it has helped the locals? And you're referring to the National Museum branch in Kiangan. Okay, we stop there because the Tualis are just one of the, how many ethno-linguistic groups do we have all over the country? Over 100? Chairman Ino, how many IP groups do we have all over the country? Chairman Victorino Manalo. The exact number do we have?
I don't have the exact number. I'm just aware that we have at least 180 ethno-linguistic groups based on our languages.
Ah, wait. Based on languages, is it 118 or 180?
I was just talking to some people earlier, and the number that we were discussing was 180.
180. Okay, but this is based on languages. So when we say that we have 180 languages, I need to know the exact number of at least to the best of our ability, of ethno-linguistic groups, and do we, is it synonymous to indigenous peoples? Okay, maybe a, in your opening statement you can say that, or a memorandum from the NCCA, so that we use the right nomenclature. So when we have, because when we do culture mapping eventually, when this is passed into law, we will need to know that. So
Very good
ethno-linguistic
point.
groups, number 180. The KWF would know that. We have KWF later, they'll be acknowledged. And then how many indigenous peoples group? NCIP should know that. Our representative from NCIP, Ms. Dunuan, do you know how many ethno-linguistic groups and how many indigenous peoples group?
Yes, Madam Chair. Based on our records, we under the project Ipanao, we have documented 101 indigenous cultural communities. However, it is still an ongoing project to document all other undocumented indigenous cultural communities, Your Honor. But as of now, based on our records, we have 101 indigenous cultural communities.
Okay.
Your Honor.
Okay, the NCIP to please submit the 101 list and where they're found, and who among them have you, to your knowledge, initiated or completed cultural mapping in the 101? And Chair Manalo from NCCA, perhaps KWF, the 180 ethno-linguistic groups and the status of those 180 ethno-linguistic groups and whether their languages have been documented at all. Okay. I will
We'll check on that, ma'am, and report
yes,
to you
thank
again.
you. I will abbreviate my questions because this is just introduction of the resource persons. We proceed, Mr. Tuna. Thank you.
From the Commission on Higher Education, we have Mr. Erickson Reyes, Chief Education Program Specialist 2. From the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, we have Ms. Maria Linda A. Andrade, Chief TESDA Specialist 2. From the Department of Education, we have Ms. Christine Magbo, Supervising Education Program Specialist, Bureau of Learning Delivery. We have Mr. Ronnie Baldos, Senior Education Program Specialist, Bureau of Learning Delivery. Ms. Glenn Basio, Senior Education Program Specialist, Bureau of Curriculum Development. We also have with us Mr. Michael Cabrera, Indigenous Peoples Education, Bureau of Curriculum Development. From the Department of Foreign Affairs, we have Mr. Gunaranao Musor, Deputy Assistant Secretary and Executive Director. We have Ms. Christina C. Popov, Acting Director. Ms. Emilo B. Felimer, Assistant Director. From our non-government agencies, we have National Committee for Monuments and Sites, Dr. Ivan Henares, Head. From the Heritage Conservation Society Incorporated, Attorney Mark Richard Evidente. From the National Archives of the Philippines, we have Ms. Maureen Janet Mercado. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Chair.
Thank you. We acknowledge the presence live of Senator J.V. Ejercito. How did you come to work in a motorcycle?
No, not today, Madam Chair.
Not
I had
today.
an interview, but also took the chance because I saw you in the monitor. And since this is about culture, being another son of Cordilleras, no, Mountain Province and Cariga.
Very
Of course,
good.
we're very much interested in of course, in the preservation and the promotion of our heritage and culture.
Very good. Thank you very much, Senator J.V. Ejercito. May we hear from Senator Binay and or Senator Robin Padilla, who were with us from the beginning online for their opening statement, if any. Will they speak? If not, I proceed. Senator Robin, hi. Good morning, Senator Robin Padilla.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Magandang umaga po sa ating ginang tagapangulo at sa ating pong kasama na si Senator J.B. Ejercito. At mabuhay po sa lahat po ng ating mga panauhin. Isa pong malaking karangalan para sa akin ang makasama po sa talakayan na ito sapagkat tunay po ang sinabi ng talumpati ng ating ginang tagapangulo na baliwala ang ipinaglaban ng ating mga ninuno na makuha ang ating kalayaan kung ang ating pong mga katutubo ay patuloy nating pababayaan. Sa mga panahon nito, hindi lamang po kultura ang ninakaw sa mga katutubo, hindi lamang po lupa, hindi lamang po kayamanan, kung hindi pati po ang kanilang buhay ay ninanakaw na rin ng kapwa nating Pilipino. Kaya napakaganda po ng talakayan nito upang atin pong buhayin muli kung ano po ang kayamanan at kultura na iniwan sa atin at hanggang sa ngayon ay inaalagaan po ng ating mga katutubong Pilipino. Akin pong binabati ang ating ginang na tagapangulo na siya pong tunay na ina ng kultura at ina ng kalikasan. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Senator Robin Padilla. Sa autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao, ilan ang ating indigenous peoples group? I wonder who can answer that question. We're not talking about Islam as a religion. We are talking about BARM now as a political entity, and how many IP groups are there aside from the Maranaos, the Yakans, the Tausugs, the Magindanaos, or am I mistaken in calling them indigenous peoples groups? Chair Ino Manalo, can you clarify? Just so that it's clear while we are with Senator Padilla. In the politically divided region by legislation called BARM, how many IP groups are there residing? And which are they? Which those which I mentioned, or am I mistaken? And who is missing? May we hear from the NTCA, please?
Yeah. Ma'am, I will have to check further for detailed information like that. But certainly in the BARM areas, there's a mix of ethno-linguistic groups. No, that would be one way we would count the ethnicities that are present. But there would also be IP groups. They would be or sometimes referred to as smaller ethno-linguistic groups, such as the like the different like the Tiboli groups, the Blaan groups, everything. There would be groups like that, no? So I don't have the exact numbers now. I would have to look it up further.
You mentioned the Belaans and you mentioned the Tibolis. Usually, they are not found in the BARM, but they are in Region 12 or 11. So my question is, but if you're not ready to answer that, may we ask from NCCA just so that it's clear? And of course, people travel and they migrate. We understand that. But which are the indigenous peoples groups or indigenous cultural communities found or who reside in the BARM region? Would you consider the Yakans of Zamboanga, Region 9, but were also in other provinces in the BARM as IPs? Yes? The Yakans would be considered, right? How about the Maranaos, the Tausugs, the Maguindanao?
Ma'am, I think at this point I'm not prepared to answer a question.
Okay, I'd rather that you say you're not prepared,
Yes,
just so
ma'am.
that, because to my knowledge, of course, the Maranaos of Lanao del Sur and some are in Lanao del Norte, but because we have Maranaos in Quiapo as well and in Green Hills and in San Juan. But what I'm saying is that who are the indigenous peoples groups and would we consider them our brothers and sisters residing in the BARM? Again, I repeat, the Yakans, because I help support the Yakan village in Zamboanga, which is not part of the BARM, which is in Region 9, but we are not talking about geopolitical subdivisions. We're talking about ethnicity. That's why. So this discussion is deeper than the proposed measures. That is why cultural mapping is so important. So earlier, assignment number 1, I asked the NCIP to give us a history of ICAP in the Philippines. Second, I also asked the NCIP to give us a list, pair their records of all ICCs, indigenous cultural communities in the Philippines or indigenous peoples group. Number 3, Now we're requesting the NCCA to submit to us in the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao, recently renamed BARM. Within that geographical area, what are the indigenous peoples groups? There is no right or wrong here because, as I say, migration is part of it. And we go from province to province, but at least insofar as ethnicity, yung mga napanganak dun, anong maituturing natin? So we will ask for those answers from the agencies if you're not ready to answer it today, within the week. So thank you, Senator Padilla, and Senator Binay. Are you ready, Nance, to go online? If not, an opening statement from Senator Ejercito, then I can ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to always commend you for really fighting for this, no? Not only the environment, but for the preservation of our heritage, our culture, which is very, very significant in this day and age of modernization, no? Because of this day and age of technology, social media, somehow our culture and history uh, may not be as interesting anymore to our youth. So I'm very interested, Madam Chair, on how we can really make it more attractive again. So probably we will have ask the NCCA later on what their plans are on promoting and again making history, culture, and heritage more attractive and interesting for our youth, which is very important. And probably this one of the reasons, one of the things that is lacking in our country, na yung love for history, love for culture and heritage, which is very, very significant, no? So that we will strengthen our patriotism, our identity as Filipinos. So that's all, Madam Chair, and be rest assured that I will have the support again, as I mentioned, being an adopted son of Kalinga in the Mountain Province or the Cordilleras. I have always believed that we have to really, it's really very important to promote, to preserve, and to protect our different cultural communities. By in this way, we will be able to promote our heritage and our culture and preserve that this as well. So later, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask the NCCA what their plans and programs are, again, to make the history and the heritage more attractive for our Filipino youth. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator J.V. Ejercito. Take note that we are amending a 2009 legislation on national cultural heritage with the inclusion of an already passed bill on third reading in the House of Representatives. So let me just state that we will only conduct this hearing and do a technical working group because sayang naman napasa na yan on third reading ng House of Rep. And it's not a new measure. I've been filing this for decades, and I hope that we pass it. Thank you, Senator JV, Senator Robin, and Senator Nancy for joining us. And in fact, Senator Nancy, I think, and Senator Revilla and others are co-authors as well. So I hope to be able to amend this and add cultural mapping as part of cultural heritage. And the other amendment to the Cultural Heritage Act would be the Institute of Living Traditions. Again, this is not a new measure since the chair of NCCA, De Leon, was there 3 chairs ago, 4 chairs ago. We've filed these measures. So we hope to be able to pass this, and we hope to have a counterpart bill for this on the Institute of Living Traditions. Okay, we start with the NCCA with your comments on the proposed measures. Let me also state that the Cultural Education Act is at the standalone bill, which is not an amendment to the National Cultural Heritage, but there is a Cultural Education Act that we will tackle today. I want all agencies who have been invited and the COMSEC to see other agencies of government and people's organizations and NGOs to submit their comments on ILT, CM, cultural mapping, as amendments to the National Cultural Heritage Act and the Cultural Education Act as a standalone. Are we clear? Para maliwanag sa lahat ng ahensya nandito, dalawang batas ang ating ginagawa. Amyenda ng National Culture, pagdagdag ng Institute of Living Tradition at ng Cultural Mapping. Let me state, hindi natin inintay ang batas, ginagawa na natin. I have a compendium of at least 17 books on cultural mapping in Antique. We've introduced cultural mapping since the time of Brother Armin Luistro 10 years ago. And this is nothing new. We simply want to legislate it so that even long after we are gone from this Senate, I hope to stay here for the next 6 years with Senator JV, but long after we are gone, the next generations will know the importance of cultural mapping, and it is immortalized and institutionalized. For example, the city of San Juan, city na kayo, no? It would be good to see a cultural mapping. And you have the heritage area, the tunnel.
Yes, Madam Chair, we've always given importance to culture and history and heritage. That's why we have an area because San Juan, as you know, is a part of history
Yes.
where the first battle of the Katipunan happened. No? That's called Pinaglabanan. So we have the Museo ng
It would
Katipunan.
be good to have a cultural
Yes,
mapping workshop.
that's
And
correct.
then all the results, you can have it in a compendium.
Yes, that's correct. We have the
Yeah.
Museo ng Katipunan there, and we have
Comment.
we really promote and prioritize and give importance to our culture and
Yes.
heritage.
Very good. Okay, thank you. May we hear from the NCCA? So, Chair Ino, newly installed chair of the National Commission on Culture. We also have Marichu, our Deputy Executive Director. Are you, is that Marichu?
Yes.
Ma'am,
Good morning po, ma'am.
Morning. And who else is beside you?
this is ED Oka Kasaysay.
Good morning, Madam Senator.
Good morning, our Executive Director, Oka,
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
from
I think you
Mindanao,
already-
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have
You
an
were
opening
referring-
statement or do you have your comments on the bills, Chair Ino?
We're finalizing our comments to be for submission, no? Because right now we're also involved in the planning for the agency. But with regard to the bill that you had that you wanted us to comment on, our general comment is that some of these things we have already been implementing, such as cultural mapping, and these are things that we will make sure will be strengthened by the legislation that is before us. No, as it is, we have been asking different LGUs to submit already the results of cultural mapping, and many LGUs have already submitted, and we have been giving out. We have been doing technical assistance for different LGUs to carry out cultural mapping.
Do you have a list? Part of your submission, please, would be a list of all local governments that have completed cultural mapping. I think one of the most comprehensive would be Antique, and I can proudly say this was a pandemic project. While people
Yes.
were on lockdown, UP Visayas and the teachers of Antique were trained and came up with 17 books. 21 21 books, hard copy, which I hope we can also put online. It's a model cultural mapping, and in fact, I've worked NCIP. You're still there, Miss Dunon. I've worked with the state universities of the Cordillera, including IFSU, Ifugao State University, with the previous president, Mohayon. Yes, si President Mohayon, the incumbents, and in fact, ilan ba ang SUCs sa Cordillera? Kalinga State U, Ifugao State University, ilan pa? Sa Mountain Province, sa Abra, Benguet, Apayao. How many SUCs did we work with?
How many
There were
SUC? How many
six
universities?
SUCs. So the output of the work we've done with the SUCs, the 6 SUCs of the Cordillera, is already part of cultural mapping. Okay, so we will ask NCCA to submit that, which LGUs have
Yeah.
completed their cultural mapping.
We'll do that, ma'am. We right now we have about we have 98 LGUs that have submitted, and we have 177 LGUs that are ongoing. But clearly, we will need to take this to a higher level and enhance the number of LGUs who are involved in cultural mapping.
Okay, I saw that Ivan Enares was raising his hand virtually. Do we have Ivan on the line? Ivan, Dr. Ivan Anthony Enares. Hi, Ivan. Good morning. Are you, please unmute. You recognize Ivan Enares?
Me now?
Dr. Ivan Enares, we saw you earlier. Okay, you're there. Can you speak? I know that you may be abroad. Can you speak and tell us about your comments of the bills? If you've not studied it, we can send it to you. But the importance of cultural mapping, the integration of ILTs, living traditions, in the National Cultural Heritage Act, and the creation of the cultural education program. Ivan.
Yes. Can you hear me? No. I think my mic is not working.
No, it's clear. Go ahead. Proceed, please.
Okay. Yes, definitely cultural mapping is very important. There's a need to really standardize the procedures that are being done in the local government units. While we have received a lot of cultural maps, there's still a need for training, more training among our local government units in order to standardize our cultural maps. When I raised my hand earlier, I was supposed to mention that there are 13 Bangsamoro groups or Muslim groups that comprise the Bangsamoro region. So yes, definitely there's a need to standardize. We don't have definitive. I definitely agree with you, Senator, that there are no definitive categories, inventories of various cultural assets that we have in the Philippines, from indigenous peoples to languages. We don't have an exact number. There has always been a debate as to what the exact number is, and I think it is about time that we come up with a definitive list of all our cultural groups, all our languages, designations for cultural properties, both tangible and intangible. So we definitely need to come up with a definitive list, as well as clearly defined designations for all these properties.
Can you please name the 13 indigenous peoples group in the Bangsamoro region?
You would have the Bajau, the Iranon, Jama Mapun, Kalagan, Kalibugan, Maguindanao, Maranao, Palawanon, Molbog, Sama, Sangil, Tausug, and Yakan.
Very good, Professor. I only named 4 or 5 out of the 13. So I was educated this morning. So definitely cultural mapping is important, must be integrated in our 209 National Cultural Heritage Act, um, Institute of Living Tradition. Can you give your comments on ILTs? This is nothing new. We're doing it. I've supported schools of living tradition. We say institute so that we put the schools together into an institute that's basically the same. And would we say that schools of living tradition or ILTs would be part of cultural mapping, right? When we map the living traditions.
Yes, that is right, Senator. In fact, when we had a cultural tourism project in the Agusan Marsh, the Agusan Manomo there had already lost all their cultural traditions. So we had to bring in other cultural bearers of the Agusan Manobo from outside the marsh in order to train them again on the traditions of the Agusan Manobo. So definitely, these schools of living traditions will be very important, especially in indigenous communities where the residents have already forgotten their cultural traditions.
We will give you a copy of the bills, or have you received it, Ivan, so that you can give your comments on how we can improve it and enhance it?
I just received the copy today. I will
Sige.
look through it, Madam Senator, and then I will
Very
give my
good.
comments on it. Thank you very
Very
much.
good. Okay, thank you. I'm sure you were also part 13 years ago of our law of the
Yes,
Cultural
ma'am.
Heritage Act. And now we're
Yes, ma'am.
amending it. Bakit hindi nyo naisip or hindi natin naisip nun nakasama ang living traditions at ang cultural mapping?
Ma'am, kasi po initially, the heritage law, when we were drafting it before 2009, was really supposed to be for built heritage.
I
But
see.
it expanded, and that's the reason why hindi kompleto yung pagkakagawa, because parang naging afterthought po during the process of creating a heritage law yung mga dinadagdag. But originally, it was supposed to be for built heritage. Ang naging concern po natin dito is that kapag pinagsama-sama ho natin lahat, some of the provisions, for example, for built heritage, na incorporate then for movable heritage. So we really have to define what is covered by certain provisions of the law. Because obviously built heritage is a very different, they have different characteristics versus movable heritage. And some provisions that would apply for built heritage should not apply, for example, for movable heritage, and some provisions for movable heritage should not apply for built heritage. So these are things
Okay, we do not fault
that we
anybody
need to
for...
look at
Okay.
when we do while amending the law. Yes, ma'am.
Tinanong ko lang yan, kaparte naman ako nung gumawa din ng unang batas, kaya nga ang batas inaamendahan para maging mas kompleto. Now, can you
Yes, ma'am.
define what is movable heritage? Is movable heritage the same as intangible heritage?
Ma'am, movable is physical, meaning you can touch it, whereas intangible is something that you cannot touch. So
Why do you call
movable,
it movable?
like for example, ma'am, yung mga santo, mga furniture, these are movable heritage. Whereas built heritage, these are the houses or structures, anything that has been constructed and is part of our heritage. So built heritage is immovable, and then you have these smaller
Immovable.
cultural assets that are movable, and then intangible would be the song, dance, literature, the knowledge of weaving, for example, the indigenous knowledge systems and practices that would include the planting cycles. These are the intangibles, ma'am.
Very good. Actually, alam ko na yan, pero mas magandang ka magpaliwanag para maliwanag sa atin. So, are we saying then that the existing law of 209 was more focused on built heritage and the movable heritage and may have ignored or not forgotten, but did not focus too much on cultural mapping and intangible heritage?
Yes, ma'am. There is a need to incorporate intangible heritage and cultural mapping into the law. In fact, one thing that we proposed in the Senate version of 10866 that was removed in the House version was the provision for local government units to declare their heritage at the local level. So if you look at the original Senate version of RA 10066, you will see a provision there that local governments are empowered to declare heritage at the local level. And that's one thing that I hope that can be returned to the current legislation.
Explain. Tinanggal
Ma'am,
yan it was taken out?
yes, yes, ma'am. There was a provision for regional cultural properties, provincial cultural properties, city and municipal cultural properties, as well as barangay cultural properties. So the respective legislative bodies of the regions, the provinces, the cities, the municipalities, and the barangays were allowed to declare at the local level, although this is already covered by the local government code. They are empowered to declare locally by the local government code. The heritage law was supposed to make that provision clearer that local governments can declare heritage at their level.
Kunin nyo yun. It was probably not included because, as you said, it's already part of the local government code. But
Ma'am, pero
it can
hindi
be
po siya-
a reiteration
Ma'am,
to
hindi po
strengthen
siya
it.
clear doon. Yung
Ah.
provision lang na ginagamit doon is that the local government can impose, how do I say this, restrictions, but it doesn't specifically mention heritage. It's a general provision that local governments can impose restriction on property.
We can say so that it's also not I know the fear of some, hindi na sila makaka-develop pag kailangan i-clear na naman sa local government. So we can make it like local governments may declare, may use the power to declare heritage sites, whether built or even declare intangible heritage practices, right?
That is right,
Kasi
ma'am.
may natuklasan. Let's say, itong si Senator JV, mahilig kumain. May natuklasan sa kanyang pag-iikot sa kanyang motor, ang tawag mo, motorismo. Sa kanyang motorismo, napunta sa Cavite. May natuklasan na napakasarap na pagkain na hindi niya alam anong tawag doon na sinauna. So, ire-research niya yon. Yun ay parte. So, yung LGU, mapuntahan niya. Pwede niyang sabihin sa Sangguniang Bayan, ideklara nga nyo itong natuklas akong pagkain na ginagamit ang ingredient na ito. Ngayon ko lang nakita sa aking motorismo. I-declare nyo to parte ng inyong lokal na intangible heritage, part of culinary heritage. Tama, Dr. Ivan? Ganun, no?
Yes, Senator, that is correct.
Para ma-preserve. Ayun. Mahalaga yan, ha? Kasi, baka lang ma-misunderstand ng iba na, ay, masyado marami restrictions. So, wag natin gawin restrictions. Gawin natin para ma-enganyo, to encourage local governments in preserving what they know but may not be documented.
Yes, Senator. I think that what is really missing in our heritage laws are incentives. For example, in the city of San Fernando, Pampanga, in 2004, we were the first local government unit in the Philippines to grant 100% real estate tax exemption for heritage house owners. So these were copied by other LGUs, but if we can include all these incentives, even the exemption, for example, from estate taxes, many of our heritage houses are demolished because the heirs do not have the cash to pay BIR for the estate tax, so they just sell the house.
Okay. Let's see.
Use the
this is not
proceeds to
referred
pay
to the
for
open meeting.
the estate taxes.
Iba na yun. Oo. That's good. However, this will complicate and lengthen the process because
Yes,
the Ways and Means Committee is not part of this committee. It can be another. Maybe it will be a Another bill. Okay.
Thank you,
Chairman
ma'am. We
Mana-
will-
yes.
Yes.
Okay. Don't leave us, Dr. Enares, Chair Manalo. You were raising your hand, Chair Ino.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify, Ivan, I think you might also want to consider. I mean, I'm sure you're very aware of this, that when we talk about built heritage and intangibles and movable heritage, these categories are not necessarily impermeable. No, they're interrelated. Built the built An intangible heritage could like weave the skill of weaving would be something you cannot separate from a loom, which is tangible, which is movable heritage. And some of these movable heritage have settings and contexts that are actually built heritage. So when you're addressing one aspect of the heritage, you are also in a way touching the others, and it's necessary to see them all, to take them together as a continuum. Thank you.
Of course, we take note of that. We don't say if it is immovable or movable, it is not intangible. But yes, that's very clear. Since Dr. Enares cannot stay with us very long, we would like to hear all that you can say now and your comments on including cultural mapping and living traditions in the National Cultural Heritage Act, and to have a standalone legislation on Cultural Education Act. Otherwise, then we will let you go so that we will let the others speak. Yvonne,
Thank you very much,
yes.
Senator. I definitely agree with Chairman Manalo. These are definitely interconnected aspects of our heritage. I think when we talk about cultural mapping, it just needs to have certain designations. Like, for example, in Korea, they have even numbers, no, for their intangible heritage assets. No, let's say, for example, for weaving, the loom, as a specific loom, for example, can be declared as a important cultural property because it is already a very historic loom, for example. The art of or the knowledge or the skills of weaving can be declared as specifically as an intangible cultural property. And then the house, for example, where the weaver is doing the weaving, can be declared, if it is a historic or a heritage house, can be declared on its own as a cultural property as well. But yes, we do understand and agree with the statement that these are all interconnected. But when we do our cultural mapping exercise, all these assets should be listed individually if they deserve to be listed individually. So I think that is what we need to really work on with our cultural mapping. Everything, all our cultural assets should be defined in this inventory, in this list.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Just
you,
so
ma'am.
that it's clear, when we speak of cultural mapping, we would include built heritage, which would include, of course, architecture, tangible heritage, like dwellings, intangible heritage, our indigenous skills, and our natural heritage as well, right? That is based
So,
on
ma'am,
what UNESCO describes as
Movable
cultural
heritage.
mapping.
Yes.
Mm.
yes, ma'am. So there is
Movable.
tangible and intangible heritage, and then
Yes,
as a subcategory of tangible, you have movable and
movable
immovable.
and
Immovable.
immovable. Yes, but natural heritage.
Ma'am, that is another thing that we will need to sit down about, because I think that the Department of Environment will have to come into the picture because they have a separate NEPAS law for that.
No,
So I'm not sure. Opo, opo, ma'am.
yes, I'm author of the INIPAS law, but we would include in cultural mapping the natural heritage, because many of our indigenous cultural communities thrive and live in protected areas, which is part of our natural heritage. Again, we cannot extricate that and say iba yung kanilang kabuhayan, sa natural heritage. So, and this is from UNESCO, it has recognized cultural mapping as a tool in preserving our tangible and intangible cultural assets. And these cultural elements would include built, tangible, intangible, and natural. So we must include natural heritage as part of our cultural mapping.
Yes, ma'am. I think we should include the category cultural landscape in the cultural mapping. So that would encompass the interconnection of natural and cultural heritage.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we would appreciate receiving your comments regarding that. So so that it's very clear in the National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009, um, tangible heritage was part of it, and it should include. Was this amended? No. Hmm? No, it's not been amended. Yes, but we propose it to include um, tangible and intangible heritage. Now, so that we include
Cultural
cultural heritage
heritage.
mapping. Anyway, the definition of terms, um, we will get to that. But we must include cultural heritage mapping, natural heritage, and the issue of LGUs to be able to conduct their own heritage mapping and for them to cite or legislate certain areas as heritage areas. And of course, Indigenous Knowledge Systems, Skills and Practices, IKSSP, through the Schools of Living Traditions is also um, one of the amendments. Chair, you were raising your hand.
I just want to concur with Dr. Ivan that the issue of the cultural landscapes, no, because it's in the context of cultural landscapes that we understand that very often the built heritage or the tangible heritage or even the intangible heritage is actually can be better understood because of the natural heritage. In other words, you cannot separate. Similarly, natural heritage and human-made heritage are interconnected. So, for example, certain poems, for example, that use the tree as a metaphor or symbol in an epic cannot be understood if the natural heritage, if the tree is already gone. So it's very important to underscore that these, as Ivan has said, these are these are interconnected and are interconnected because of the cultural landscape. Thank you.
Let me just state also that the term natural heritage is introduced and shall refer to the flora and fauna, the natural, biological, and physical components of the environment and related ecosystems and biodiversity, whether terrestrial, wetland, or marine. Then we also mentioned about LGUs. They're mandated to conduct comprehensive cultural heritage mapping, and that's why we have the CHED here and the DepEd, aside from other agencies who can also help our LGUs. Uh, Here from the DepEd and the CHED, are you online? Our representatives, do you have something to say, or would you like to submit?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair. I'm Christine from Department of Education, and as per our colleagues from the department, we shall be submitting our inputs to your office as soon as possible. Time.
Kasi nga pag mga hearing, sila handa. May I know whether the bills were sent to you and whether you have studied it, and are you ready to discuss it or not yet? You will just submit it to us.
Opo, actually, we just recently received the invitation to attend the meeting, and we're currently on the works to consolidate all our inputs from the different offices and the different bureaus po.
Okay, thank you. About CHED, okay, we have a hand raised, Arvin Villalon, Arvin Manuel Villalon. Yes.
Yeah, representing CHED, I am part of the technical committee on cultural education, and
Okay.
although I received the invitation just this time, but we concur that we will be reviewing the papers regarding this. But just for a note, because I have seen that natural heritage is part of cultural mapping, that we do have for the Bachelor in Culture and Arts Education, that we do have a 3-unit course on Philippine heritage, and that includes also natural heritage as well. So this will be very timely, especially for teaching our would-be MAPE teachers later on, because if the intention is really to tap them as resources, so both from DepEd, our MAPE teachers, and at the same time, those who are teaching the Bachelor in Culture and Arts Education can help out in this cultural mapping law.
Thank you, Mr. Villalon. Thank you. All the agencies present, may we request you to submit your comments on the proposed measures after the hearing. And then the request of the agency, my request of NCIP and NCCA by tomorrow noon. Dr. Casanova is here, Commission ng Wikang Filipino. How many languages are there, the Philippines?
I'm sorry. Sa aming pong tala ay mayroon po tayong 130 wika sa ating bansa. 30. Opo. Pero may mga bagong development po kasi patuloy po ang pananaliksik ng Komisyon sa Wikang Filipino at ngayon po ay sinasabi ng aming mananaliksik na meron na po tayong 134 at ito po ay kanilang iulat sa lalong madaling panahon.
Iba-ibang numero natin.
Opo. Iba din po kasi sa UP, iba din po sa Summer Institute of Linguistics na matagal na pong nag-aaral ng mga wika sa ating bansa.
Kailan natin tinatawag na language at kailan tinatawag na dialect?
Meron po tayong tinatawag na mga wika at dialekto. Ano po? Yung wika, ito yung wika na nakagisnan po ng isang pamayanan na nabuo ng kanilang mga mamamayan nung unang-unang panahon. At may mga wika po na tinatawag na dialekto. Yung dialekto po kasi ito yung variety ng isang wika. Ang halimbawa po, ang Tagalog ay isang wika, isang pangunahing wika. At meron po itong mga variety o tinatawag nating dialekto. So pag sinabi nating variety, kasing tumbas lang po yan ng dialekto. Halimbawa, ang Tagalog po, meron pong Tagalog Batangas, Tagalog Cavite, Tagalog Laguna, Tagalog Mindoro, Marinduque, Bataan, Bulacan at iba pa po. No? At iyan ay mga variety o dialekto ng wikang Tagalog. Ganon din po ang wikang Cebuano. Ang wikang Cebuano po ay may mga variety din po. Ano po? At matatagpuan ang mga variety ng Cebuano sa iba't ibang mga pamayanan at lalawigan po sa Mindanao. Okay, maging sa Negros po ay may bahagi ng Negros na Cebuano ang wika. Kaya mayroong isang pangunahing wika na mayroon pong dialekto o natawag nating variety. Sa Bicol po ay maraming mga wika at bawat wika po ay nagkakaiba sa ilang mga aspekto. Okay? Kaya maaaring mangyari na sa isang lalawigan o sa isang rehiyon ay nagkakaiba-iba ang mga wika. Ganon din po sa Ilocano. Ang Ilocano po ay wika na pangunahin at meron din po itong mga variety o dialekto kasi po alam naman natin na malawak ang sakop ng wikang Ilocano, ngunit ito po ay may mga variety, no? Pagpupunta po tayo halimbawa sa Tugigaraw, sa Isabela, sa maging sa Nueva Vizcaya, may mga Ilocano din pong nagsasalita doon maliban po sa Ilocos Sur at Norte at maging po sa iba't ibang bahagi po sa Hilagang Luzon, no? Sa Mountain Province, sa Cordillera, okay? Ay may mga variety po ng mga Ilocano.
Thank you very much. We will suspend our virtual hearing now towards a technical working group to be headed by Attorney Ipatluna in my office. And I would expect that the agencies would give two submissions: the amendments to the National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009 to include cultural mapping, and ILTs, Institute of Living Traditions, as an amendment to the existing law. And second would be a new legislation on cultural education program. Because I see that the agencies don't seem ready. Perhaps you would be it would be better if you would submit your comments on this, on the Philippine Cultural Education Program, all of that. In fact, it's also included in the PDB plan. Okay, so I will not adjourn, but suspend this to schedule, and the submissions will be by today and tomorrow at the latest for all submissions, and a technical working group at later part of this Wednesday, on Monday or Tuesday next week. And I want to be able to sponsor this within the month of January, before the first week of February, February being Arts Month. And hopefully we can pass it. Oh, see, at least one of the two in February, which is Arts Month. Okay. Yeah. Because there's so many agencies, but they always say that they will submit. Let me just, I will be patient. It's New Year, but in our next hearings, I would request every agency to be prepared. For the head of agencies to be present, even virtually. And second, to be prepared and not to say that we will prepare with our position papers. But we understand that invites were sent out a week ago. It doesn't take 24 hours to prepare a position paper. You were given your budgets, you have your salaries, you have their benefits, you have your MOE, operational expenses. So you must be ready for your intelligent discussion on bills at hand. In the meantime, I'll be patient. I'll give you the time for submission this afternoon, latest tomorrow, and a technical working group will be scheduled beginning of next week na. Sige. Attorney Ipatluna will head it, but I may, and I will show up. Okay? So, thank you, Dr. Casanova, for being present here physically. Thank you also to the others who have joined us. Yeah, I no longer will mention each and everyone. Is there anyone virtually who would like to speak? Because I don't see their faces. They're all naka-off. If not, we suspend the hearing for a technical working group, just one, and then we hopefully will be ready because it's been passed on. The DFA, who in the DFA is present online?
President Senator, my name is Mr. Gonar Musaf. I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary from the Office of Public and Cultural Diplomacy.
It is now called Public and Cultural Diplomacy.
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-mm. On the measures, or you will just
Um,
submit?
well, first of all, thank you, ma'am, for inviting us to this hearing. We will be submitting our official comments to the bills proposed. For the meantime, I would just like to convey the following: that um, we acknowledge the inclusion of DFA as among the agencies that LGUs are supposed to work with for the enhancement of cultural diplomacy and participation in the programs of UNESCO. This is in regard to the bills related to cultural mapping. So we look forward to having this bill passed, and hopefully this will also help us in doing our functions in terms of cultural diplomacy. In fact, during the recent retooling program that we did for cultural officers from selected foreign service posts, one of the recommendations actually was to conduct cultural mapping to assist us in promoting Philippine culture overseas. With regard to cultural education, we also acknowledge the efforts to integrate and mainstream this initiative. And in fact, more than just promoting it at in the academe, we also emphasize the need also to have
That's why.
sort of a continuing education initiative, because in the case of the DFA, a lot of our cultural officers do not have enough training to conduct cultural diplomacy. That's why last December, in cooperation with NCCA, we convened or held the inaugural cultural retooling course. So we hope to institutionalize this in the
Can you
coming
kindly repeat the course? What
Okay.
is the name of the course, sir?
It's a retooling program for cultural officers from
Retooling. Okay.
retooling. Yes, ma'am. So this is the first time that such a course is being offered in the DFA, because we recognize the fact.
This is a cultural retooling course, cultural
Yes.
mapping course. What is it called?
It's supposed to update our cultural officers on how they can better do their mandate in terms of promoting culture. Because here in the department, we have a lot of retooling programs for finance officers, for assistants to nationals,
Okay.
but we have yet to
May
do.
I know how long it took? Just one day? Was it 1 week?
This was for 1 week, ma'am. So we gathered all the selected cultural officers from those posts with Centro Rizal. So hopefully this year, we
Did
can.
they have to come home for the conference?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So
it was-
expensive. You could have had it online. Sa
Ah.
mga all over the world, or our cultural officers came to Manila for that
Only-
1 week seminar?
Only for ma'am, only for those with Centro Rizal, because the whole concept of the cultural retooling program, from the title itself, it's called Dama. So it was a multi-sensory program. So it was not enough to do it virtually. So
Okay.
this is something.
May I request, thank you very much. May I request the Public and Cultural Diplomacy Unit of the DFA to submit to us? The Central Rizal was created because of this law, right? 209.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It's been 13 years. May we see what the Central Rizal, if all embassies and or consulates in the world have Central Rizal? And is it just a name that there's a room and then you have several books? Or do you have activities? So just kindly give us a summary from the enactment of the law in 209 to the present. How have the Central Rizals in different embassies in the world conducted themselves with the budgets given you? What activities did you do? Second, I initiated the Philippine Studies Program, different from the Central Rizal. From the time I first initiated this in SOAS in the UK, may I ask the DFA to submit what embassies and consulates and jurisdictions in the world have we had Philippine studies? What kind of courses were offered? Were there Filipino lecturers or foreign lecturers? Who were they? Who attended the lectures? Were they students or invited professors or outside? And what was the feedback? Was it welcomed or was it a flop? Did anyone attend? Was it enriching? Was it for the children of Filipino migrants? Was it for DFA personnel and officers in that jurisdiction? So I would like to know. So starting with SOAS, to RUR, to Humboldt, to Complutense, to Isaias, where you were, right, in Singapore,
Yes,
to
ma'am.
was it Michigan? Michigan, to NYU, to ang dami. Then I'm also giving, and I would like to ask you to coordinate with incoming with ambassador, newly confirmed ambassador Luli Arroyo Bernas in Austria to get the approval of the best university in Vienna for us to have Philippine studies because she's interested, as well as in Sorbonne University in France. It's in Paris. Sorbonne is in Paris, right? Oh, the ambassador Michelle Bocos already knows about this. Does the ambassador, Philippine ambassador in Paris, know about it? Knows about it from October. May I know if the ambassador acted on it? The French ambassador only learned about it the other day, and ambassador to Austria, Luli in Austria. So dalawa yan. So for 2023, we will have other Philippine studies. But for sure, we will have in France, I hope it can be Sorbonne. And then in Austria, reach out to the post because Ambassador Arroyo is going, yep, in March. But we would like to get things moving. Okay? So an assessment of Philippine studies, an assessment of Centro Rizal, because we may amend Centro Rizal or see how we can make it more dynamic. Because I don't want Centro Rizal to just be a name, to just be a corner, like a little library with no activities. Like we initiated the documentation of Rizal, Rizal's footsteps, figuratively, in Germany. That was during pandemic. It was a pandemic project. This is something that Centro Rizal in Germany should have done. But it had to take someone not in a DFA to do this project with the NCCA, of course. So what I'm saying is that I want to know what projects since 2009 have the Centro Rizals all over the world. How many Centro Rizals are there?
I'll check, ma'am, the figure, ma'am. Hold on, ma'am.
Lahat naman ng tanungin ko dito sa executive, puro kayo will check Puro naman kayong we will submit, we will check Bakit ako
37,
January
ma'am.
3 pa lang nagkatrabaho na, alam ko na. O sige,
37
so wag na
service.
muna. Sige, I'll be patient with all of you. Importante pag pupunta kayo sa hearing, alam niyo mga tinatanong ko ha, kasi trabaho niyo yan. So,
Okay.
I would like a Central Rizal assessment because Central Rizal, confirm it, if I'm accurate, if I'm correct, was created from this 2009 law. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Tama ba ako? Yes. So, perhaps we could enhance Central Rizal. Yung ginagawa ko nga, parang sa Central Rizal na yun. Dapat yung mga ginagawa namin, yung ginagawa nyo Okay. So, an assessment of Central Rizal and the Philippine Studies Program and suggestions where else we can put Philippine Studies. Okay? Baka marami pa ako maisip, marami pang homework nyo, yun na muna, tuldukan na muna natin.
Copy, Senator.
Okay? Yes. So who else would like to speak? Because I don't want to hear, we will submit. When we used to go to class, when we have a test, we not say we will submit. No, it's due now. Fill in the papers. Finish or not finish, submit your papers. So I'm being very patient with all of you. You ask for your budgets and you're here face to face during the budget and we give you big budget which is signed into law. So may I kindly request all agencies next time in the technical working group, please come armed with your brains, with your soul, with your knowledge, with everything. Armed. Okay? Hindi pa din we will submit. Because when I present this on the floor, I cannot advise my colleagues, I will submit. We have to know it. And you know it because you are the experts. That's why you are in the agencies, right? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Musor. Okay. Who else would like to speak? But I bar you from saying we will submit because everybody needs to submit. And I've been here since 1998. Let me advise all agencies. People who are facing the Senate must be armed with the knowledge, has a prepared statement on the comments on the measure, and will submit the comments of the agency. Iba pa yung alam nyo, and you are the resource persons and experts that we should ask, and you should have the information ready. Iba pa yung we will submit. You don't just come in and say, good morning, we will submit. So what's the point of having a hearing? But then again, I will be patient. It's the new year. But then again, this is our job. And we're all being paid by the Filipino people. So this is a very important measure. Salamat, Ivan, Dr. Ivan Henares. Naghanda ka at nagbigay ng mga komento mo. Yes. And we salamat sa inyong lahat for going online. But I would expect a heartier, more constructive, more inspiring, educational, learning discussion next time. Okay? In the meantime, maraming salamat po nang kayo'y online. Hindi ko naman nakikita mga mukha ng iba. So last call, is there someone who still would like to speak? Okay, please open all your cameras so I see your faces. Yes, and then you submit your... Next time, wag nang we will submit, ha? You should be ready, ha? Everybody should be ready, please. Everybody should be competent. Incompetence is not tolerated in my hearings. We should not be working in government if we're not ready to answer questions. Yes. Okay. So thank you very much, Comsec, Mr. Tunak. Lahat ng kanilang hinanda po, hingin po natin ngayong araw because they should have been ready when we invited them. And then the additional inputs are requested will be for tomorrow. Am I speaking to my Comsec? Yes. Okay. Oh, Senator Padillas, there. May tanong ka, Senator Robin?
Wala na po, ginang tagapangulo. Gusto ko lamang pong dagdagan kanina yung patungkol po tinatanong niyo po kung ilan po ang non-Moro IP sa BARM. Ito po yung Teduray, Lambangian, Dulangan, Manobo, Belaan, at Higaunon. Yun po. Yun lamang po, mahal na ginang tagapangulo.
Salamat, Senator Padilla. Salamat sa mga representante ng mga ahensya ng gobyerno. Hindi lahat man ay nakapagsalita dahil isasubmit pa nyo. Pero kung merong gustong magsalita na handa sa hearing na to, I would be happy to listen. Pero kung sasabihin po nyo ay magsasubmit, sige po, isubmit na lang po nyo para sa TWG. We now move to a TWG scheduled for next week. Anong kaya nyo, Monday? Or you announce it? No.